Hello everyone. Today I want to show a very interesting game played in 1991 between Nigel Short and Jan Timman. Let's check out the game right away. Starts with e4, knight f6, e5, knight d5, d4, d6. This is the Alekhine's defense. Knight f3, g6, bishop c4, and knight b6. Bishop tucks back to b3, bishop g7, fianchetto, queen e2, defending the e5 pawn, and knight c6. White castles and black castles. Here, there's a common idea of playing bishop to g4 for black, which would put pressure on the f3 knight and therefore on white center, so h3. This ensures that there's no bishop c4 and therefore this is actually the fight for the e5 square. Because the knight is a key defender, and so is the queen for the e5 pawn. a5, gaining some space on the queen side, and a4, stopping that. d takes e5, d takes e5, and knight to d4. So black is trying to exchange a pair of knights and mobilize the queen and hopefully the rook. That way there could be some development for black. Sorry, black is trying to exchange a pair of knights. Knight takes and queen takes. And rook e1 here, defending the e5 pawn. There was a double attack. Here, probably Jan Timman felt that e6 was a threat and he went e6 himself, which really is not required and it's not the best way of playing. Bishop d7 could actually be totally fine, and you could go if knight c3, then simply bishop c6 and black's development is fine. And if after bishop d7 white tries e6, what happens is that after an exchange, let's say bishop takes, you have f takes, there's pressure on f2. So simply blocking the check with f7, there's a semi-open f file for black, so black is perfectly fine here. So e6 really was not required. But anyway, we have e6 played. Knight d2, just developing. Knight d5, which is perfectly fine, just centralizing that piece. Knight f3, attacking the queen and defending e5, and queen goes to c5. Queen e4. The idea is to shift the queen to the king side and start some sort of a mating attack. With bishop h6, knight g5, that's the idea. And black prevents that by playing queen b4. That offers a queen trade, in fact. And here, Short comes up with a very interesting idea. He plays bishop c4, just blocking that queen's attack towards his own queen. And of course, this runs into knight b6. And Short is prepared to ruin his pawn structure and plays b3. But what he wants is to go towards the black king, and he's willing to compromise on some positional features to achieve that. Knight into c4, bishop into c4, and rook e8. We would love to play rook d8, but bishop g5 would just harass that rook anyway, so rook e8. And it also allows the queen to go back to f8. That's going to be very important later on. Rook d1. Black has not claimed the open file, so we claim it and gain some advantage. And queen c5. Here, queen h4 was played, which is perfectly fine, but there was even a stronger idea of rook a3, and the rook can shift to the d file and double down there. It could harass. So right now, the bishop on c8 cannot develop. So let's say b6 or is played to develop the bishop on the long diagonal. You will have rook d3, and the rook can land on d7 as well. Those ideas would be there. So queen h4 was played anyway, and b6. The idea is to develop the light square bishop. Bishop e3, hitting the queen. And here, queen f8 was very important. That's why rook e8 initially was important. Queen f8 provides some sort of a defense on the king side. If let's say knight g5, you have h5, so it slows down white's advance there, and there could be some chances if, let's say, knight e4 were to come, you will have bishop b7. Those ideas would be there. White is better, but black is not lost here. However, after bishop e3, queen c6 was played by Timman. Probably he thought that he can put a bishop on b7 and have a queen-bishop battery which would threaten checkmate, and that would give him counterplay. But this is not sufficient. Bishop h6 first. If black were to capture, that only helps white, so bishop h8. And rook d8 immediately. Of course, you can't capture because queen into d8 would be checkmate. Very soon. You'll have to give up the queen and then it will be checkmate. So bishop b7 is forced, opening the other rook's defense towards the rook, and rook a1. And we'll see that black really does not have too much counterplay even with the queen-bishop battery. Well, if, let's say, you try to grab a pawn here, you simply have rook into a8, bishop into a8, and rook d8. The other rook will swoop in. And if bishop d6 trying to go back to f8, you can simply give up the rook, queen g6 and queen f6. And white will win this game. So you have to be very careful. So after rook a d1, bishop g7 was played, so to prevent further infiltration and have a threat of exchanging bishops on h6. There's also a threat of queen e7 in some lines because the rook on e8 is pinned, but now the queen has to guard the h6 bishop. So rook 8 d7, simply moving out of the way, not allowing for any exchanges because the queen has to guard the h6 bishop as well. And we don't want to trade pieces just now. And this also creates a threat of rook into f7 in certain lines, and the other rook can swoop in some cases. There's knight g5, or there's a threat of exchanging bishops and queen f6. A lot of tactics can emerge, so rook f8 simply. Defending the f7 pawn. Just we can see a sample line of, let's say, queen e4 trying to trade queens. You have rook into f7. If queen into h4, then rook into g7, that's good enough. If king into f7 after that, then knight g5 is very, very strong. So rook f8 was played. Now bishop takes g7, king takes g7, and rook 1 to d4. So it's a complete bind in which black is operating. Even queen e4 is now stopped. Rook a to e8, you have to play something. Here, well, queen g5 would be the best way to continue, but queen f6 is just is strong enough as well. King g8, and well, one way to do it is queen f4, forcing king g7 less to come to h6. Queen g5, h5, and knight h4. This could be a very quick way of finishing the game, but it would not be the same game had this been played. The idea which Short came up with is really, really beautiful. He played h4 first. He's threatening h5, h6, so h5 by black to prevent that. And king h2. Now it seems a bit odd. Why is he moving his king right now? Why is he not going for the attack? But the king is going to be part of the attack. And let's check out what replies black could have. Let's say bishop c8, challenging that rook on the 7th rank. You have g4, just going for it. H takes, let's say, knight g5. g3, for instance, you have king takes, bishop d7, king goes back to h2. And after, let's say, queen into a4, trying to go for some checks along the 2nd rank, you have, you have h5 even. You have to capture. Rook goes to h4, and we can see that black is stuck in a mating net here. So there could be a couple of moves, queen into c2, rook into h5. You can give up the queen, but black is not getting out of it. If, let's say, after, if instead you have bishop c8, you have g4, and then you have bishop into d7, for instance. You have g into h5, and you have to capture back. You have queen g5, completely winning for white, so that it doesn't matter if we give up the rook on d7. Rook to c8 was played instead. playing something, but simply king g3, and perhaps now you can spot the idea. It looks so wonderful that a king is marching in the middle game. Well, rook c to e8, black is just helpless. And king f4, the king keeps coming up. And it can't be stopped. Well, bishop c8 was played now, but it's too late. Simply king g5, and Jan Timman had to resign because there is no decent defense against what's to come. So king h7 runs into queen into g6, for instance, because the f7 pawn is pinned, and that will be the end of it, really. So wonderful victory for Nigel Short. I hope you all enjoyed this game. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you soon for the next game.